Today, we're revisiting the golden age of the 70s and 80s cinematic music. Tripp, the viewers already know what we're talking about, but you don't. So I'm going to give you 3 clues to see if you can guess this multimedia legend. That's the first challenge. And the second challenge, I'm going to ask you and the viewers to name 10 of the 14 Billboard Hot 100 top 20 hits associated with their work. Clue number 1, Arnold, Freddie, and Juan. Clue number 2, Danny, Tony, and Bud. And clue number 3 was credited with 5 top 40 hits. Can you name this cinematic star?
Wow. Wow.
Sweat Hogs.
John Travolta.
John Travolta. That's right. John Travolta, between his solo work and the soundtrack from Grease, Saturday Night Fever, and Urban Cowboy over about a 5 or 6 year period, had 14 top 20 hits. And I'm wondering if you and the viewers can name just 10 of them.
So they aren't necessarily John Travolta songs.
No, they're from movies that he was the star of.
All right. Well, first of all, if we're going to do John Travolta songs, okay, Let Her In was his first hit when he was with the when he was just starting from Welcome Back, Kotter. That was his first single.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That was back in 76.
So if we're gonna go with stuff from Saturday Night Fever, obviously we would go with that. We would go How Deep Is Your Love?
Yes.
Staying Alive.
Yes.
Night Fever.
Yes.
If I Can't Have You.
Yes.
You Should Be Dancing.
I am not seeing You Should Be Dancing on the list.
All right. Well, You Should Be Dancing was on the soundtrack. Okay. We then let's move to the movie Grease. You're the One That I Want with Olivia Newton-John.
Yeah, that was the one, number 1.
Summer Nights with Olivia Newton-John in the cast.
Could be perhaps one of the greatest summer songs of all time. That's correct.
Hopelessly Devoted to You. That was Olivia Newton-John.
Right. That peaked at number 3. But you're on a roll.
I don't think Grease Lightning was released as a single. So I think that's it for Grease.
That is not on the list. You're correct.
Yeah. I mean, the only other song from that soundtrack was Beauty School Dropout by Frankie Avalon. I think that was released, but it didn't. Oh, Grease, the theme song, Grease.
The theme song. Frankie Valli sang it.
Yeah,
Barry Gibb wrote it. That's correct.
Yeah.
Let's see how many you have so far. If you jumped all over this one, I knew you would. You've got Staying Alive. You got Night Fever. How Deep Is Your Love? If I Can't Have You, You're the One I Want. That's 5. Grease, Hopelessly Devoted is 7. You've got Summer Nights, which is 8. You have Let Her In, which is 9. We're just looking for one more.
From Urban Cowboy, Looking for Love by Johnny Lee.
That's one of my favorite songs. That's correct. There you go.
And Stand by Me by Mickey Gilley, which was his only top 40 hit. I think that's it from Urban Cowboy. The only other one I would go is Twist of Fate from the movie that they released in 1983. Olivia and John released in 1983.
Here are the remaining songs that were on the list. Congratulations, Tripp. You successfully conquered the challenge. Viewers, how did you do? Let us know in the comments. Disco Inferno by the Trammps. Kenny Rogers, Love the World Away. I peaked at number 14.
That was on Urban Cowboy. Okay.
Look What You've Done to Me, Boz Scaggs.
That was on Urban Cowboy.
And then the other one, also, I believe, from Urban Cowboy was Joe Walsh's All Night Long.
Yeah, I should have had that one. By the way, now I got a funny story for the B side, because I think we're at that
We
point
are,
of
we're at the B side,
our
yeah.
thing on the B side. Originally, in the movie Saturday Night Fever, the scene where John Travolta is walking down the street with a can of paint at the beginning, the song was supposed to be Lowdown by Boz Scaggs. And they filmed it and they thought that was going to be the song for it. Well, what happened is Columbia Records would not allow it to be used by RSO is the one who released it. And they would not allow the rights for the song because they were saving it for a disco movie they were doing, which they never ended up doing, I should mention. So instead, the Bee Gees wrote Staying Alive, and that's what became that iconic opening sequence to Saturday Night Fever. I think it's kind of funny that Boz Scaggs then did a song for a John Travolta movie. And Urban Cowboy, of course, starred Deborah Winger as co-star, and Madeline Stowe, who was, I think, in one of her first roles, if I recall. And you know, we talked about in a previous show about how the genres would change. When disco failed miserably, country music became huge. Urban Cowboy and country became all the rage. And that was part of this. And it was funny because I was sitting in my mind when we were going over the songs. I'm saying, you know, Kenny Rogers do something for Urban Cowboy? And you said Love the World Away, and you're right, he did do Love the World. But I was like, Kenny Rogers was the biggest country artist at that time. And I was like, he didn't do anything for that, and I couldn't remember that. So that was a good one. I like that.
Well, you know, I'm kind of glad you brought that up because typically the reason I wanted to do this is I can't think of an artist that over a 5-year period of time had more of an impact on pulp culture, including fashion, music, than what Travolta had with the run of those 3 movies. Incredible, right? Three totally different genres. So the impact, I think it's unparalleled. But Urban Cowboy is in a lot of ways overlooked. But in some ways, some people say it almost saved, kind of quote unquote, saved country music. And all of a sudden, country became cool again.
Well, in the 19 and this goes into a little esoteric here. It's definitely B-side material. In the 1970s, you started to have FM radio become in vogue, and so more music formats were available. You also had country music radio stations kind of expand, and there was this fight between old country and new country. Olivia Newton-John was at the forefront of this. John Denver also, the traditional country artist fought the new country artist, and they were, you know, the Eagles, the country rock, the Eagles, Jackson Brown, those guys. And the country music radio stations would play a lot of those artists. Jimmy Buffett started as a country music artist. And then when disco came in, country music was kind of steamrolled. Urban Cowboy kind of ignited this because when disco died, and it died quickly, you know, they needed something to fill. And the next thing was country music. And you had Kenny Rogers, and you had this new country and this new wave of artists. And again, part of it was also because you'd have them, they would do country songs and they would do adult contemporary songs. And the story I always tell is the song Islands in the Stream.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at a country music radio station. That song was released in June of 1983, and we added it right away, and it was #1 within 2 weeks. So we were playing that all the time. Well, Top 40 finally got around to it and was playing it in the hot rotation, and it was one of the top songs in the country in the latter part of the year. By then, I had moved back to New York. I'm listening to Top 40 or CHR radio stations, and I'm still hearing Islands in the Stream. I said, I've been hearing this song for 6 months, you know. But that's kind of the way it worked with that. And Kenny Rogers, you know, you talk about John Travolta. Kenny Rogers was such a huge artist. And people kind of forget that to a certain extent. Unfortunately, over the years, Kenny became more well known for the fact that his face, he had too many plastic surgeries. I mean, he and Burt Reynolds both probably went to the same plastic surgeon, and they looked awful at the end of their lives. And that was, unfortunately, they became punchlines to a certain extent rather than known for their music. Kenny died a few years ago, and it was, you remember all the great hits he had. He had so many big songs, so many chart-topping number ones. It just boggles the mind.
And just a couple of real quick things as we close out the B-side in this episode. My notes indicated that song Islands in the Stream was written by Barry Gibb and was originally earmarked to be a song for Marvin Gaye, which I found interesting. Number two, I'm just curious, Tripp, in the 1980s, did you start wearing cowboy boots, or did you ever do any line dancing, or did you ever ride a mechanical bull?
No on the bull. No on the line dancing. The cowboy boots I had started to wear when I was in college in the late 1970s, but I guess I wore boots. I wouldn't say they were cowboy boots, because cowboy boots I think have the point on them, on the toe. I never went that far. Now I will admit I do have a cowboy hat, which I purchased a few years ago at an appearance I did at a Harley Davidson, and it's got the Harley Davidson logo on it and stuff like that. And I have since DJ'd a couple of country dances, but that was back in the 2010s, not in the 1980s.
Viewers, let us know in the comments, and if you got some pictures, you can send that to my email at info@philyale.com. Line dancing, mechanical bull, cowboy boots, belt buckles, the 1980s. One last thing. I double checked on this. The explosion in 1980. Urban Cowboy hit the theaters June the 6th, 1980. This was the exact same summer as the famous Who Shot JR from the show Dallas.
Yes. That's right.
But there you have it. Another episode of Trippin' Up. You can follow Tripp on WTRSradio.com as well as WRHQ 105.3 FM, Savannah. Tripp, did I get it right?
Yes, you did. Q105 Radio in Savannah.
I got the links that are going to appear right down there so you can continue to follow Tripp. And please, you know what? Let's keep the coffee hot. Let's keep the records and the memory spinning. And let's keep the conversation flowing. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Trippin' Up.